Good morning, class. Are you all there? Good morning, Murtaza. Good morning, Vicky. Good morning, Mallikarjun. Good morning, Ravi. Good morning, Asha. Amrita, good morning. Hadia, good morning. Farhan, good morning. Nina, good morning. Shirisha, good morning. Yes, Hadia. Shashikant, happy morning to you too. Rajesh, good morning. Ladma, good morning. Did you get my PowerPoint? Open the PowerPoint. We are doing modes of entry today. Sandeep, good morning. Lavanya, good morning. Anjali, good morning. Shilpi, good morning. Maiwan, good morning. Praju, good morning. Devika, good morning. Triven, good morning. Manikanta, good morning. Okay. Today, Roshan, good morning. Pavan, good morning. Shall we start? Hassan, good morning. Okay. Today, I'm going to do something called modes of entry into international business. Okay, see, international business means you're basically from one country. Ahmed Fahim, good morning. Basically, international business means you're basically from one country and you go and do business in another country. When you go and do business in another country, you can go in a number of ways. First of all, you can manufacture in your own country and you can sell in another country. Okay, this is one mode. Sometimes what you do is, if you find labor in another country cheaper, then you prefer to imagine labor is cheaper. You prefer to manufacture your goods in another country and sell in that country. Or you may manufacture in one country and sell in some other countries. All right? This is a multinational and a transnational. Okay, how they do. So, for example, Honda and Hyundai, for example, it manufactures in India, manufactures cars in India, and these cars are sold in India as well as abroad. All right. So, in different ways, you may decide to enter. Sometimes the resources of a country of operation. See, the domestic country means the country you are from. Country of operations means the country where you are operating, where you are selling, where you are doing, where you are doing your business, where you are doing your international business like marketing, selling, etc. So, what happens is here there are various ways in which you can enter. Also, remember that there is a multinational business with a range of products. All the products it may not take into the country of operations. It may decide which products to take into which country. So, It cannot go in the same mode of entry into different countries. It has to go differently. Then there are legal restrictions, regulations of a country. There are, as I told you, non-tariff barriers, tariff barriers, etc. So depending all the calculations done, how it is easy to go, how it is cheaper, economical to go, how it is more profitable and feasible, they will make their own strategies and then they will go. For example, Procter and Gamble, once again. Yeah, Priksha, good morning. Hadia, good morning. Yeah. Sujan, good morning. Akarsh, Santosh, Naresh, good morning. Yashaswini, good morning. Rima, good morning. Teja, good morning. All of you, good morning. Okay, now I was telling you about uh, Procter and Gamble and Unilever are giants. They are conglomerates. They are based in the US. But what happens is they try a strategy, say a marketing strategy, which includes advertising, integrated marketing communications, etc., a product strategy, everything, and they try it in the United States. When the product strategy or the marketing strategy becomes successful in the United States, they take the same strategy into Europe and they try the same strategy. If you ask why, it looks as if the culture, the mentality, the attitude, the which percolates into the requirements of customers. See, if you are from the same culture, then your requirements are all same. Your needs are similar. So the culture between the United States and Europe is similar. It's not same, it's similar. So there is a lot of similarity in their needs, in their requirements for different products. So that is why Procter and Gamble and Unilever start their marketing strategies in the United States, and when they become successful, they take the same strategy into Europe. All right, they take the same strategy into Europe, and when they take it into Europe and they become successful, they have tried to bring the same strategy into Asian countries like Japan, for example. But the same strategy has not been successful in Japan. They had to change the marketing strategies. For example, some colors, some rituals. See, some colors are taboo in Asian, Asian cultures. Some people don't wear black. Some people don't wear white. Within India, you have the people who are widowed wearing white. At the same time, you have brides wearing white. All right, so different cultures within a country also exist. What people eat, what people do not eat, it's also part of culture. How they behave, how they dress, how they think is all part of culture. We have discussed culture in a previous class, but culture will creep into all my classes because culture is intertwined with international business. So here we are talking about modes of entry. When I talk about modes of entry, I'm talking about how a business that is from its domestic country or the home country or the country of origin. If these are the words that we use for a country from where a business is born. It's from the home country or country of origin or the domestic country, how it goes to another country, to the country of operations, a new country of operations. How does it enter? There are various ways in which it enters. In my last class, unfortunately, I was unable to do my class completely, and I had intended to do a PowerPoint on foreign direct investment. Today, since I'm doing modes of entry, one of the last modes of entry is foreign direct investment, and I will go and do that PowerPoint also, at least some part of it, which is, see, most of my PowerPoints are done. Most of the material is for you in order to enable you to answer your exams, because there is material in that. All this material I did not explain. I'll explain you the concepts, and what is not there in the PowerPoint, I will explain. What is there in the PowerPoint is useful for you to write your exam. Okay? The benefits, the advantages, the pros and cons are all there. Okay? So here we come now. Look at your slides. I have given you the slides. Hope you have it. Choosing a mode of entry. How do you choose a mode of entry? You have several decision factors. Go to slide number 2 and slide number 3. See, the choice is between home country production. It means exporting. Like I just now said, you can manufacture your products in, say, if you're an Indian company, you can manufacture your products in India and you can sell abroad. All right? That the mode of selling abroad by manufacturing in India is called exporting. Even in exporting, there are various ways in which you can do. Okay, there are various ways in which you can export. So then the next one is host country production in firm owned factories. Host country production. Who is the host country? For an Indian, if you're going to say US, US becomes the host country. Or an American MNC, which is home country is US. If it comes to India, India will become the host country. So host country production, if an MNC produces its products in India in a factory that is owned by the firm, that is, example is Coca-Cola in Bidadi in Bangalore. Coca-Cola is a multinational. It manufactures its soft drink in India through FDI, foreign direct investment, which means the factory in Bidadi belongs to Coca-Cola. It has built the factory and it uses its own factory to manufacture. There are modes where you do not use your own factory also. That is why the emphasis on firm owned facility. Then next one is host country production performed by others. This is franchising and licensing. See, American company, let's say KFC or Pizza Hut, etc. Then they manufacture in India for India, and this is given because there is franchising and licensing. IKEA also gives franchises. IKEA is a Swedish furniture manufacturer. It is in India too, and it gives people licenses and franchises to manufacture. Now, I cannot use licensing and franchising in the same way, because licensing is different from franchising. I will tell you why. Now, we are talking about the considerations. Rajesh, good morning. Bharati, good morning. Teja, good morning. Wilson, good morning. Lakshmi, good morning. Chaitra, good morning. Madhavi, good morning. Hemant, good morning. Rupa, good morning. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Okay. The other factors that we consider before going into another country of operations is called the eclectic theory factor considerations. In this eclectic theory, there are three different factors. For example, the first one, go to the next slide. The first one is ownership advantages. Ownership advantage, see, it is like living in a rented house versus living in your own house. It is as simple as that. So, when this factor, should we have our own factory or should we manufacture through someone else's factory? For this, the point that comes into the picture is the need for control. What do you mean by need for control? See, Toyota company is known for its superior manufacturing processes. These manufacturing processes cannot be written on paper and passed on. They have to be seen and understood. So it is better for Toyota if they want to use the same manufacturing processes all over the world. It is better for them to have their own presence in the country of operations. You can pass on many things, but the working methods, the standard operating procedures you can tell, but how to do, Shweta, good morning. Yeah, how to do, etc. It is better if the person is there and shows how to do. Yahya, good morning, Yahya. Annapurna, good morning. Manjunath, good morning. Okay, I hope today the video is fine. Shekhar, good morning. Okay, so the first thing in eclectic theory is ownership advantages. When you own your house, when you own your factory, if you want to make an extension, if you want to make a modification, you do not have to wait for permission. But if you do not own it, you're just running the factory, then you require permission, etc. And the procedure is long. You have to wait. So the first one is the need for control. The second is the availability of resources. All right. See, many times resources, let's say water, electricity, etc. When you're an MNC, for example, in China, when an MNC comes into the country, the government itself becomes a partner. Since the kind of government there is it is based on communism. So in communism, you cannot have private entrepreneurship. You cannot have private business at all. So the government itself becomes a partner to the MNC. And you can imagine when the government, yes, Karthik, Shekhar, Kumar, Madevi, all good morning. When you become a partner with the government ensures everything for you, like the supply of resources like electricity, water, and maybe raw material, etc. Subsidies in many things. All this are provided by the government. That is why China has attracted the highest amount of FDI. It is the leader in the this thing. If you say which country is the leader in attracting FDI, it is the China is the leader. If you see the difference between the leader China and other countries, it's a very big gap. So when excuse me, when the government itself gives you the assurance that you can do business and will assure you that you can do well, then there's nothing greater than that. So that's why China is a country which has attracted a lot of foreign direct investment. Hold on. The disadvantage of using a phone for the PowerPoint is that every time there are messages. Yeah, good morning Naveen, good morning Preeti, good morning Sushank. Yeah, so I was talking to you about the eclectic theory about, and there are various reasons why why and how an MNC chooses a particular mode of entry for entering into a country of operations. Asha, good morning. Why an MNC enters into a new country of operations in a particular way, and the factors I told you. And in the factors, this you have the eclectic theory, and in the eclectic theory you have the first one, that is ownership advantages. Under the ownership advantages, you have factors like the need for control. Do you need to control? Then second, availability of resources, and which I have already discussed. And the third one, the firm's global strategy. What is your strategy? See, there are three kinds of, you must have studied about strategy last semester. There are basically corporate strategy, business strategy, and tactical or operational strategy. So, whatever strategy you have decided, that strategy has to be implemented commonly everywhere. You cannot deviate from the strategy, then there's a confusion. Okay, so it depends on this. So, come to the next slide. Okay, For example, as I told you, if you see the next slide, it talks about the ownership advantages. As I told you, embedded strategies, embedded technology, or superior manufacturing practices of Toyota, you cannot practice, you cannot imitate unless you see it. So it is better for Toyota itself to come and have your own firm there, and you yourself who has employees who have worked for Toyota in other countries or Japan itself, and know very well what are the manufacturing practices. When they implement, only it becomes proper. So that is why. Next, internalization advantages. Please remember, it is not internationalization. If there is a mistake anywhere, just click. It is internalization factors. See, if you have an in-house agency, it is always better. You give somebody a salary and you have your own employees to do it. It is better. For example, you have a team of lawyers. Say you're employed a couple of lawyers, and for every legal aspect, from permission to licensing to any disputes, everything your own lawyers will go ahead and they'll do it. And since they are employed by you, they know the history, they know the background, and they continue. They know when to go to the court, when to what to do, when to do. And they also know, for example, if you want a further licensing, what to do, how you had done the licensing before, what stage of licensing are you on, do you need additional licensing. All this, now if you have in-house legal system, legal department, they will tell you what to do. But if you do not have, this is the advantage of internalization, internal department you are having. But on the other hand, if you are looking at a situation where you say, I don't want to keep any lawyers on my payroll, I think it's a waste of money. Whenever there's an issue, I will go to a agency and I will do it. See, if you're going to a same agency, they may know the history of it, but employees will change also. So there is a chance that every time your time is wasted in getting all the files, making them look into it, and then look at the next procedure. So these are the, and then you may not be able to engage the same law firm again and again. So then what happens? If every time you have a different law agency, every time the whole history has to be told to them, they have to make a study and then they have to go ahead. Suppose something is very urgent and they don't realize the full history background of it, and they draft something that is not in tune with what you want. So these are the things that can happen. So internalization means having your own, like say, having your own legal team, having your own, commercial team for, doing all the licensing businesses, etc. And also for, licensing, public relations, and even media management. You have your own in-house journal. It becomes really nice. Tejas, good morning. Najim, good morning. Happy morning to you too, Tejas. Okay, okay. So here we are, right? All right. Yeah. See, class, if you have any problems with any classes, or if you have any issues with anything regarding your MBA, you have the freedom to talk to me. You will give me a WhatsApp message and I'll tell you whether you can call in case I have another meeting or in a workshop or something. Yeah. Anjali, I don't know what is happening. For me, I have no interruptions. It's going on very smoothly. My internet, this lockdown period, I think they are not maintaining. See somebody shouting on the road. I think you can hear it. Okay, so here we are. We were talking about internalization advantages. Then we talk ownership, I told you. Then location advantages. See, for example, your product is bulky and it requires a lot of effort to take it from place to place. Whatever you're doing, say you're manufacturing heavy machinery, so you would rather have the machinery manufactured as close as possible to the place you're delivering. And even if you're bringing it from overseas, you're manufacturing in one country and selling it to another country, then the country in which you're manufacturing, you will see that there are barges or ships, that can carry your heavy machinery by sea, because by sea is the cheapest. Okay, you cannot take heavy machinery by plane. Even if you do employ a cargo plane for your machinery, imagine the amount of money you will spend on transport. Yeah, so you have to do it in the cheapest way possible, most economic, I shouldn't say cheap, the most economic way possible. That is why when you manufacture, you may look for a country which has a big coastline, so, and you will manufacture this machinery near the coast so that it goes. See, Kudremukh Iron Ore Company Limited used to mine ore. This ore used to come by shaft or chute, of a big pipe from Kudremukh to Mangalore port. From Mangalore port, it is to go to other countries, mainly China during the Beijing Olympics, etc. They wanted a huge amount of iron ore to manufacture steel for the Beijing Olympics, for example. And that time, from Mangalore port, it is to go. Kudremukh closest port was Mangalore. So, like that, you may want to manufacture your product in a country which has a big coastline, or you're going to a country of operations. You may set yourself in a place which is close to the coastline. Okay, is it being interrupted for everybody or is it only for Anjali? Then if you with your answer, I can make out whether my internet is bad. Najim, Tejas, Preeti, is it being interrupted again and again? Or is it Anjali's distance problem? If it is my problem, then I'll have to uh, call my. Everyone is getting interrupted, is it? I'll see, man. I'll call up my internet person. Okay. So I told you about internalization. In internalization, also remember, instead of paying a regular salary, suddenly you will have to pay a lot of money for contracting, etc., etc. Yes, Murtaza says it's okay. I'm having. Okay, thank you, Shilpi. No, last class, I think it was the 31st, and my bandwidth had become low because I'm at home. No, I watch a few Netflix movies. Yeah, and though try to this thing, I don't watch so many movies. I have my other work, but a little bit of TV does get used up for the bandwidth. The bandwidth gets used up for the TV. So, but we are careful. We are very, conscious that I have class and I have to maintain it. But sometimes I really don't know. Okay, thanks, Tejas. Okay, now, so we are after this was the introduction. I told you, no, no. C is the cheapest, Manjunath. Manjunath is asking me a question. He says going by sea is most expensive. No, the cheapest mode of transport is water. Either it is by lake, river inside the country, or it is by sea. It is the cheapest form of transport. Most of, see, if you remember, last month or so, 1.5 months ago or so, there was a big problem about the Suez Canal. You know what is the Suez Canal, no? I will explain to you if you want in another class. I'll send you the diagram or the map, geographical map, and you will understand. See, the Suez Canal is a canal which is which is owned by Egypt. It is a canal where it is not broad. It is just enough for a big ship to pass by, big ship to pass, and only one ship can pass at a time. It can go from left to right or right to left. So on a particular day, ships will go from right to left, and on a particular day, they will go from left to right. I'll explain to you properly in another class. Okay. Now here, what happened in the Suez Canal? The one ship which was long did not go straight; it got stuck horizontally. So they struggled for about 5 6 days, and they managed to release the ship. There were 140 Indian crew on that ship. 140 Indians. They were manning the thing. Unfortunately, and then the Suez Canal is something where you have to do dredging. Dredging means the sand fills up from the sea. The sand fills up in that canal, so you have to keep on dredging means you have to keep on removing the sand, so that you have the water sea is deep enough for the ship to go. You can see the ship on up no above the water. It is as much under the water also, so much height you have, quite a bit of height you have, because it has ships holds are there, no? There is fuel, there is all the material it is carrying, the engine room, all this is in the hold. So whatever you see on the surface of the water, there is as much underneath. Not as much, because glacier, no, if you see ice glacier, whatever you see above the water is only 1/3, 2/3 is below, it seems. If you see a glacier that is about 1 story high, you have to be very careful, because it is 2 stories are under the water. 2/3 is under the water, it seems. Ship may not be so much, but ship also has, underneath. So how do you repair a ship? It is called dry docking. So you go, suppose a ship requires painting or repairs or maintenance. How do you do it? You go see, there is a, there are called, I think they're called ballast tanks. These tanks are what, you fill them with water and they will sink, and you remove the water, they will float up. So what they do is they take these tanks like a platform. There's a big platform, and they sink it under the. They'll sink it. So the ship will come and stand in the place where the ballast tanks have sunk, because the tanks are filled with water. There is a big rack, like imagine a square rack like thing, huge thing, bigger than the ship, and under that there are tanks. So the tanks are filled with water so that they sink. When they sink, good morning, Abhishek. When they sink, the ship is brought and kept in that place. Once the ship is tied and safe in that place, the water in the tanks, ballast tanks, I think, they are removed. When the water is removed, then the tanks start floating. They come up and they float. As they come to the surface, they float so much that they remove the ship also. They will come and sit under the ship, and they will remove the ship also up. The ship will go above the water, because the tanks will have to come, the rack, because of the tanks, they come and stand on the surface of the water. Such is their property. They have to come and stand on the force. Since they are floating on the surface of the water, and above the tanks is the rack like thing for the ship to stand, and above that rack is the ship. The ship goes above the water. Then you can do the painting, repairs, removing the rust, whatever you can do. Once the maintenance of the ship is done and the ship is ready, the paint has dried, etc., etc., ready to go, then they fill the tanks with water. So the tanks will go down. When the tanks sink, the rack also attached to the tanks will sink. Whatever attachment they've done with the rack to the ship will be removed. So the ship will be free. Ship will be in the water. The tanks and all will go down. then the ship will sail away for the next ship to come in. This is how the ships are repaired. So what happens is, in the Suez Canal, only one ship can go. It can go right to left or left to right. Why is the Suez Canal so important? If you don't go through that canal, you have to go round the Cape of Good Hopes. If you see Africa, how it is, round the bottom of Africa, you have to go and sail. It takes more than 15 days, it's at least 15 days extra. And 15 days extra means how much of fuel, how much of manpower, how much of time, energy, everything is. So to save that, ships pay Egypt whatever they have to pay tax, and they use the Suez Canal. So when the Suez Canal was blocked, so many ships were blocked. So Manjunath, your answer is why so many ships were there. If you go and see Google, you'll understand that most of the goods that get transported are by sea. See, the Britishers were ruling India. If you see, in where I was teaching before, I was teaching in Central College, isn't it? There are buildings there that were built during Britishers' time, and there I used to take my students and show them. You know the raft, huge rafts, okay, that keep the building up, support the building. Even those iron rafts are brought from England. You can see on that, made in England. If you go and see in some old buildings, British buildings, you can see even the rafts are brought from there. Even the railings of the stairs, no, the iron ones, those intricate ones with a beautiful design and all that is brought from the UK. Why? The Britishers did not want. See, first of all, why did they do colonization? Why did any country do colonization? If you see England, when the Industrial Revolution happened in the 1774, all that 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution happened, they started producing so many goods. The Napoleon called England the nation of shopkeepers, it seems. So there were so many goods manufactured. England being a small country, there was no market for the goods. So they went into colonization. What did they do? And how they could colonize. And once they did colonization, the colonies became the biggest market for their goods. The colonies were the India, for example, was a very big market for the goods that they manufactured. And how did they bring it to India? By ship. You know, Britishers conquered the world. They said, no, the sun rises and sets on the British Empire. It means wherever it is rising in the earth, they have a colony there. And wherever the sun is setting, there was another colony there. So why did they manage to get so many colonies? England is such a small country. How did they manage? Only and only because of their naval supremacy. They had so many ships, they knew how to, they were expert sailors, and that as compared to others, their ships were faster, their ships were, strategically built, and they could capture anybody, they could sail faster, a lot of advantages they had. And even their navy fighting power by sea was super better than other countries. That is why England managed to do so much of the world was their colony. All right, and why did they do colonies? Basically, to have markets for their goods, because they had, you can manufacture, but you have to sell as well, isn't it? And when England is so small, where will you sell? So these colonies were the best thing for them to sell. Okay. So yes, Manjunath, that's your answer. Then here, wait one second. Okay. So the first mode of entry is exporting. See, exporting is manufacturing goods in India, for example, if you are an Indian, and sending it to other countries. Now here you have some reasons why exporting is necessary, etc., etc. Those reasons are for you to read and answer. You know why. It's simple. So there are three types of exporting. Direct exporting. The first one is direct exporting. Direct exporting means you manufacture, say I'm exporting. I manufacture in Bangalore and I send it. Okay. direct exporting. Indirect exporting means, say I go to North Karnataka, buy some handloom saris, they are manufacturing, I buy it and I export it, indirect exporting. Then the third one is intra corporate transfer. Intra means within the corporate. You have a company's branch in India, you have a company's branch in, say, France. So from India, you send it to your French, counterpart, your branch. Or it could be like Hyundai. It has Hyundai India. It manufactures, and it sells in, say, Hyundai Japan, or Hyundai Germany, or Hyundai England. Okay, because I told you Hyundai manufactures cars for India as well as for foreign countries. So I have given you pictures for direct, indirect, and intra corporate transfers. Then here we are bothered about why should we do exporting, because of government policies. Sometimes, no, see, when your see, I gave you the example of Honda. When Honda went to America, it started manufacturing in America. Why? Non-tariff barriers, protectionist measures. When Honda manufactures a car in Japan, it is called CKD condition, completely knocked down condition. It is broken down into parts, brought into America, assembled in America, and sold in America. But it becomes manufactured in Japan. So many protectionist laws, non-tariff barriers, tariff barriers apply to the car. So at the end of it, the car with all the taxes become more expensive than American cars. So Honda cannot compete. The price, no, where price is concerned, it cannot compete with the American cars if it manufactures in its own country. So same thing. Remember that example when you read this slide of government policies. Then marketing concerns. See, Asian Paints goes in Australia. It doesn't go as Asian Paints. It goes as something as I forgot. You can Google and see, because Australians do not like the word Asian, so they will not go as Asian Paints. Okay, so that image, made in country of origin image, all this is necessary. Not that all countries do not like Indian products. Okay, I'm just giving you an example. All right. So logistical considerations, taking the goods, carrying the goods, transporting the goods, all this is difficult. So those considerations, distribution issues, all this are there. Okay. Then this is whatever material I'm talking about is for you to answer your exams, for your answer. Okay. Those are not necessary for me to go into point by point. Then you have export intermediaries which support export. They are export management companies. See, I've given you what is a export management company. Then you have enterprise networks and international trading companies. There are many types, like I remember United Trading Company when I was in Kuwait. So they bring in they bring goods from all over the world. If you go to United Trading Company, it was called UTC. It is a company which imports from many countries to some other country. It doesn't even belong to Kuwait. See, it was an American company. It was selling in Kuwait, and it was selling American products, Japanese products, English products, European products, all the products it was selling. So I think you'll understand what it means when you say international trading company. Then the second mode of entry into a business is international licensing. What is the meaning of licensing? See, suppose take my glasses. My glasses are to be manufactured in a particular way, and they are branded. Imagine. So I want to give someone from, say, someone from another country approaches me and says, give me licensing to manufacture your glasses. And I say, okay, fine, you give. So what is the deal between us? The licensing fee. I take a licensing fee and I tell them, you can manufacture these glasses. I will tell you how to manufacture, how I manufacture. These are the things I will explain to you, and you can manufacture. Okay. Now this licensing fee can be a one-time fee, and but usually it is an annual fee, extends per year, etc. This is licensing. Whereas franchising, suppose someone asks me the franchise. See, in international licensing, the person who asks me, see, I'm the owner of this, but I have given a license to sell their products. They have to do their advertisement themselves. All right, it is in international licensing. In international franchising, what happens is I give them the franchise. So in a franchise, I ask for two things. First, package sum, like the international licensing, no, I ask for an initial sum. And then secondly, in franchising, I'll ask for each of these glasses, no, a small royalty I will ask, small or big. Okay. I'll ask a royalty on each of these glasses sold, each of the units of the product sold, I'll get a royalty. So that is the difference between licensing and franchising. So now comes to advertisement. In licensing, you have to do your own advertisement. But in international franchising or franchising, the owner company, the one who gives the franchise, will do the advertising. Example is McDonald's. McDonald's gives international franchising to all its franchise holders. But McDonald's will advertise as McDonald's. Have you ever seen McDonald's Bangalore or McDonald's US or McDonald's New Delhi? No, it is just McDonald's because it is a franchising. So in franchising, there are three differences between licensing and franchising. In licensing, you do your own advertisement. In franchising, the main company will do the advertisement. You don't have to bother about the advertisement. In licensing, you give an initial fee and perhaps annual fee. In franchising also you give an initial fee and maybe annual fee. In licensing there is nothing else to pay, but in franchising you pay a royalty for every unit of product you sell. All right, this is the difference between licensing and franchising. About why it is necessary, why this, why to that, you can see here advantages and disadvantages. Now let's come to a slide which says special entry modes for international business. See, the first special entry mode for international business is a management contract. It's an agreement where one firm provides managerial assistance, technical expertise, or specialized services to a second firm for some agreed period in return for a flat fee or a percentage of sales. It is like this. See, in this specialized entry modes, there are various types which I will go to. See, for example, in Mangalore, there was a hotel, five-star hotel called Hotel Manjarun. Okay, it was owned by the Tumbe family, Yenapoya family. So they wanted to start a five-star hotel. Since they had no experience in five-star hotel before, they asked, now it is ITC Welcome Group, to come once the hotel was built. When during the building of the hotel also, I think they had experts from ITC Welcome Group coming. You know, Welcome Group is, yeah, Ramanan, good morning. Welcome Group is the hotel chain of ITC, hotel management group of ITC. Welcome. Welcome Group, this one, West End, sorry. Welcome Group has one hotel here, no, West End, no, which is near the opposite the golf course, man. Yeah. What the family did, the Yenapoya family asked Welcome Group to come and manage their hotels. So what happens once the hotel was built? I think during the building of the hotel also they must have given directions on how to build. Possibly, I'm not sure of that. But then, the first 5 or 10 years, I think 5 years, there were ITC managers working on the this thing, working in the hotel. There used to be general manager was from ITC. There was a food and beverage manager who was also from ITC. There was a finance manager, a purchasing manager, a human resource manager, front office manager. These were all people from ITC. And for lower position, the local Mangaloreans were, employed. The local Mangaloreans were employed. Later on, they took on the jobs of the ITC managers, welcome group managers. And when the welcome group managers left, so they were trained along with these managers to look after the hotel, because there are particular systems and procedures in this one, systems and procedures when you manage a hotel. All right. Okay. So we are talking about specialized special management contracts. In that you have turnkey. The first type is the turnkey projects. Okay. Turnkey is a project. You look at this. It's a turnkey project. It's a contract under which a firm agrees to fully design, construct, and equip a facility, and then turn the project over to the purchaser when it's ready for operations. This is called boot. BOOT. Yeah, like a shoe. Build. B stands for build, own, operate, and transfer. Build, own, operate, and transfer. Boot. Sometimes it's only bought. BOT. Build, own, transfer. Okay. You don't operate. Sometimes it is boot, sometimes it is bought. Now it comes to foreign direct investment. As I told you, foreign direct investment means at least 10% of the investment that an MNC brings into a country of operations is sunk into the infrastructure of the place. It is sunk into the infrastructure of the country. Okay, as I told you, foreign direct investments creates um, gross GFCF, gross fixed capital. Um, oh God, I'm sorry. I told you last time, GFCF. Okay, so it gross fixed capital. I forgot. Sorry, man. I got a call. I'm a little disturbed. Okay, GFCF. Okay, important call. I'll take it. So gross fixed capital, it creates infrastructure for the country. Now, why is FDI necessary? One more reason. Whenever you want to want to start a business, you need capital. When you need capital, you go and borrow from a bank. When you borrow from a bank, you have to pay back EMI every month. This EMI consists of interest plus a part of the installment that you are paying back, and every month it is quite a pinch to pay back this amount. It is quite a pinch. So that is one thing. If you For a country also to have its, yes, gross fixed capital formation. Thank you, Shilpi. I forgot that F word, man. I told you last time, no? GFCF. Keep it in mind. It's a very important word. Thanks, Shilpi. Okay. So please remember that in a see, just as you require capital to start a new business, a country requires capital to start to do some projects for industrialization. Usually, what a country does, it will float gilt-edged securities. Say the government of India floats some gilt-edged securities. Why does it float this? Because it requires money for projects. And who gives them the money? Commercial banks. The merchant banks are the ones who approach the commercial banks, and the commercial banks agree with the merchant. The merchant banks underwrite the whole requirement sometimes. If the government requires 100 crores, a merchant bank underwrites that. It assures the government, you give me brokerage charges, underwriting charges. Brokerage is less, underwriting is more, because they assure you that you'll get your 100 crores. So the 100 crores is nothing, but a commercial merchant bank underwrites this commitment towards the government of India, and it approaches commercial banks. and it makes it bargains for a lesser interest, etc. And banks will give, because banks need to reinvest people's money, and this is the best place that they can reinvest, because they are assured of the investment, they are assured of their returns, they are assured of getting their money back, because it's the government. So this is the way usually governments take like this. When it is not possible, when they require the money for bigger amount of money, that the say the banks of the country, not India, we are capable, where the banks of a country cannot support. So, or sometimes there is money, but there is no infrastructure, the economic infrastructure to transfer. That time, the government of the country borrows money from World Bank, etc., etc. World Bank or IMF or any international bank that can provide money. But remember, when you take from a bank, you have to give the installment plus the interest. The EMI is very painful and pinching every month or every year, however you decide to pay it, because it's a government thing. No, it might become not every month. So here, what happens is if you get money through FDI, it is better. Firstly, you have GFCF, Fixed Capital Formation. Shilpi, thanks. You get GFCF, okay, which means they will build, say, the department of CVSMS is built by a foreign company for a, originally, imagine they are building it for a factory. They want to make soft drink in that car. Then they said, I don't want to manufacture here, it is not possible. I'm going away to my country. Can they take the building? They cannot take the building. Can they take the road in front of the building? They cannot take the. Can they take away the water facilities, electrical connections, etc.? They cannot take. That remains as GFCF in the country. So this is the second thing. The first thing is you get money easily where you do not have to pay back interest, okay, and secondly you create GFCF for a country through FDI, okay. So FDI is very important for a country, not only for India, for any developing country. FDI is a smoother transition to industrialization, towards industrialization, than with commercial loans, and because the interest rate also is quite heavy. All right. So in FDI, what are the types of FDI that you get? See, FDI, see, you see on PowerPoints that I gave you in my last class, there are two ways in which in FDI comes into the country. One is directly you can come because you're coming into certain products or certain sectors. Sir, I'm in class. I'll call you in 10 minutes. Sorry. So I will. What happens is foreign direct investment. I was talking you about. So you can come in directly, or you can come through the government controlled sector. So you look into that. That is a little important that you see properly. All right. Other things and all, no, whatever I have taught, you can write. So now the under FDI you have a greenfield strategy. Greenfield is literally a greenfield. You have a field of grass, okay. You have a field of grass, and nothing is there, so you come there and you build your factory. That's what it means. So there, whatever you have to buy land, lease land, build up the factory, build up the machinery, all that comes into that. So that's a greenfield strategy, advantages and disadvantages. Then secondly, FDI can come in, as I told you, FDI can come in as a greenfield strategy. What happened in Bidadi for Coca-Cola was a greenfield strategy. Second one is acquisition. See, in the US, there was one Ford had in, I think, Cincinnati, I cannot remember where, they had a factory where they were manufacturing cars, but they had stopped manufacturing cars for a while in that factory. And Toyota came in and asked them, see, you give me this factory, I will manufacture cars in your factory for you as well as for me. I'll build Ford cars for you, I'll bring Toyota cars for myself, okay. And what does Toyota want? Toyota wants that factory and a little help from Ford to for the dealership network. So formation called NUMMI was formed. NUMMI. You can Google it and see. NUMMI. N for no, U for umbrella, M for mother, I for India. Okay, so NUMMI was formed. It is still in operation, and this is the way. So sometimes when an old factory is there and people are not running it, etc., then the straight away acquisition happens. Then if you see in insurance and all that in India, many are joint ventures. Toyota Kirloskar Motor, Toyota and Kirloskar, all right, something like this. And Max New York Life, for example, there are this is a joint venture. You know, I won't tell you much about joint venture, you know. So a joint venture, only issue is your name should come first or my name should come first. Asia Brown Boveri was not Asia Brown Boveri, it seems. It was Brown Boveri Asia, it seems. Then Asia, something like this. There will be small little tussles which you have to clear by having papers, legally drawn up papers. Okay. So with this, I think it is 10:12. I have covered modes of entry and a little bit on foreign direct investment. Please don't think that I have wound out for one chapter together, because international business is such that everything comes in every chapter. Okay, so I will be back on Monday with this thing. This is an important 10 marks question. Explain the modes of entry of an MNC into a country of operation. Please, this thing. I repeat, explain the different modes of entry of an international business into a new country of operations. Explain the modes of entry of an MNC into a new country of operations. With examples, you explain. All right. If there is any doubts, you can ping me on my inbox. All right. I'm always there. Any problems, let me know. Even any other problems, any other issues. Okay. As regards your MBA. All right. We are here to help. Okay, then stay safe, stay healthy. Hope you enjoyed the class. I'm glad there was no, interruption. I was very sad, unhappy that the class did not go on well. And maybe, it's just about 1 hour class, but it is enough because you cannot go more. And if I teach more, what is assimilated will go away. So this is enough for today. I will come back. If you want more classes from me, you want me to speed up and have more classes per week, let me know. Okay? Stay safe, stay at home, stay healthy. God bless you. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka.